Hi everyone, this is Men's here. I'm currently on the regular server, but I'm going to be going over the new World of Tanks 9.5 update. The main concern is the new British tanks. As you can see, there's two new light tanks, three new medium tanks, and 6 new tank destroyers. You can go up the new light tank and medium tank line to reach the tank destroyers, or you can go up through the Valentine and then reach the TDs that way, or SPGs for that matter. Now back to the garage. I'm going to start out with the Tier 2 light tank, the M2. This is a very mobile and lightly armored light tank, as you would expect for it being a Tier 2 tank. It has very good gun depression and a quick firing, good penetration gun. Now, it's Tier 2, so you're going to go through this pretty quickly, but all in all, it's not a bad tank. At Tier 3, we have yet another Stuart variant, the Stuart 1-4. Now, being Tier 3, this is another quick tank to go through, but this does have a pretty good top gun, the 2-pounder, and the Stuart, it's very mobile, lightly armored, and the penetration on this thing at Tier 3, you won't have any problems going through Tier 4 and 5 tanks with it. Some Tier 5 heavies maybe, but you do have a pretty good APCR around to deal with that, and it also has good gun depression. Now moving on to Tier 4, yet another tank that will be very reminiscent of the M3 Lee for you, that not a lot of people like. Now, it does have a different top turret on here. It's not usable. However, it does take off a little bulge the M3 had that was very easy to hit while cresting hills. The Grant, when upgraded, has 10 more hit points than M3 Lee, 5 more view range, and aside from that, has the same top gun and similar stats on it than the Lee. So, aside from those differences, it's pretty much the same tank. Pretty good armor for a medium tank. It lacks a functional turret. You only have this gun to use, so it plays more like a tank destroyer, and it has a very good gun for a Tier 4 medium because of the lack of a turret. Now, Tier 5, if you're still moving up this branch, you're going to go to the Sherman 3 and the Sherman Firefly. So the Sherman 3 is very similar to the M4 Sherman, and basically same amount of guns and stuff like that to choose from. You do have one extra gun on here, I believe, the 6-pounder. However, the top 76mm gun M1A1, pretty much the same stats in the M4 Sherman. However, it has a better rate of fire, so you do have more DPM, and upgrade it, you do have 5 more hit points than the M4 Sherman. The AP round on this too, pretty much the same. However, you do not have an APCR round, you have a premium AP round, so you lose a little bit of penetration, but you gain better normalization. And then the Sherman 3, the new one here, only has 10 degrees of gun depression compared to the 12 degrees that the M4 American Sherman has. So keep that in mind because it will make fighting on hills a little more difficult. Now, topping the medium tanks off is the Tier 6 Sherman Firefly that a lot of people have been waiting for. This tank, it's very lightly armored for a medium tank at Tier 6, especially turret's not that great, and it's not as mobile because it does have this big gun, and its engine isn't as strong as you would expect, and basically it leaves a little bit of room to be desired for mobility because you're definitely going to need it. Now, it does have the 17-pounder gun that has 150 damage and is actually pretty good on a Tier 6 medium tank. You have enough penetration to deal with any tank you're going to be facing, and your APCR round is very good as well. You do have 0.38 accuracy and 2.1 second aim time, so your accuracy isn't always going to be the best, but it's serviceable. However, the main downside of this tank, along with your armor, is it only has 6 degrees of gun depression, so it makes fighting over hilly terrain and small hills very difficult, because the Sherman is somewhat tall for a medium tank, and you can't exactly point over this bulge with the larger 17-pounder gun on it. Now, moving back to Tier 5, you start tank destroyers. The Archer is a very unique tank. It only has a 12 km/h top speed going forward. However, backwards it has a 32 km/h speed limit, so it goes faster in reverse. And while its engine isn't exactly strong compared to its weight, it does move pretty quick running away. And moving up to the battlefield, you're going to want to drive backwards due to the increased top speed going in reverse, but it does make backing up from enemies coming towards you a lot easier because you don't have to turn around. Now, the trait of the new tank destroyer line is good mobility, poor armor, good firepower, not exactly good gun depression. So the Archer starts this off with the 17 pounder at tier 5, which is a very good gun. 150 damage, pretty good rate of fire on it for it being at tier 5. 0.36 accuracy and 2.3 second aim time. Aim time's a little high, but nothing you can't work around. Now, the penetration, 171 millimeters, great, and 239 millimeters at tier 5. You're going to have no trouble going through any tank that you face. Now, upgrading to the tier 6 Achilles, yet again, this looks very similar to its American counterpart. And as you would expect from the Archer, you yet again have very poor hull armor, very poor turret armor. It does have a turret on it. All the tanks from here on out have turrets. And as far as the tank plays, since it does have poor armor, it has a very high top speed, 48 kilometers an hour, and a very good engine for its weight. So it's a very quick tank, and its terrain resistance isn't bad either, so you're going to move around very easily. Now, the 17 pounder carries over from the Archer, and it's still pretty good. It's a tier 7 gun, so being on a tier 6 tank destroyer, it's still a good tank. Has very good DPM, accuracy, aim time is improved, and damage per shot and penetration is still good at the tier 6 level. Now, gun depression, only 5 degrees of gun depression. So you have to keep that in mind because it makes it very difficult to fight on hilly terrain since you can't exactly point down your gun very much. And here comes the tier 7 Challenger. The tier 7 Challenger, once again, very poor hull armor and turret armor. However, it does have 200 millimeters of turret armor on the rear of it, which can provide some lucky bounces. However, you're not really going to be shot there very much. Now this tank is very fast, 52 kilometers an hour for the top speed, and a very good engine for its weight, so you're going to be able to zip around very quickly. Downside is very large turret, very tall, very long hull, and with that poor armor, you're going to be a pretty easy target to pick off. Once again though, you do have the 17 pounder gun, which not a lot of damage per shot at tier 7, especially if you're facing 8s and 9s, and the penetration can be a little bit low at times for a tank destroyer. However, very good accuracy, aim time, and rate of fire, so you do have a very good amount of DPM. The Challenger here does have 10 degrees of gun depression, but since your gun is located very high up on the tank and you're very tall, it does make it difficult at times to actually utilize that 10 degrees of gun depression. But overall, it's a very good support tank. A lot of these tanks play further back from the fight because they do have very good firepower and mobility, but they lack the survivability. So next up is the tier 8 Charioteer. Now this tank, once again, very poor armor, but it does have a very good gun, and it finally ditches the 17 pounder gun. The 105mm anti-tank gun, L7, very good damage per shot. Penetration for your credit APCR round is very high for a tier 8 tank, and you have a premium 210mm Hesh round to use, which can be useful against medium and light tanks and poorly armored tanks that you face. Now, this tank's basically all firepower because, as you see, very poor armor on the hull and turret, and while it does have mobility to its advantage too, it only has 5 degrees of gun depression. because it does have that very good gun in the semi-small turret for the gun, so you can't exactly point down very much. Now accuracy, 0.35 is good, however it is a little bit low for a poorly armored tank like this, and a 2.4 second aim time is a little bit high because at times if you're actually spotted, it's hard to pop out, get a shot off and move away, but the high penetration values do offset that a little bit. Overall it's a very good tank as long as if you play further back, take shots and remain hidden. Now moving to tier 9 is the Conway. This tank, as you can see, increases the height and size of the vehicle dramatically. It's slower than the Charioteer. It only has a 35 km/h top speed. However, its engine and weight are good to where it'll reach that in a few seconds. It's very mobile. It's just capped at that speed. You'll reach it really quick, and if it was a higher top speed, you'd go faster. However, since it's there, you're going to be capped to that. Now, you do upgrade to the 120mm L1A1 anti-tank gun, which very good damage, penetration. You don't have a HESH round. You do have this credit HESH round, but you're better off just sticking to AP and APCR. You're not going to have any problems with this gun with the 0.32 accuracy and 1.9 second aim time. This tank is basically all firepower once again. You only have 5 degrees of gun depression, which is going to be pretty much the trait of this tank line because it is a very large gun in this turret and the gun is high up, so it's very hard to point down. And since you are tall, smaller tanks and shorter tanks can pull up near you and it's very difficult for you to hit them, but more likely than not it's going to be hard to fight on hilly terrain. So moving on to the next and final tier 10 tank is the FV4005 Stage 2 Tank Destroyer. Now this tank has the 183mm gun L4, which, like the FV215B 183mm, does a lot of damage with its head shell. Now, compared to the FV, this has absolutely no armor. Your whole armor is very bad. Turret armor is only 14mm, so you're not going to bounce anything, and people will chuck a lot of HE at you. Now, as far as armor and size goes, you're very large, and you're actually the tallest tank in the game currently. The mouse only reaches about this high, so you'll actually stick over a lot more terrain than the mouse, and a lot of the small buildings are actually just short enough to where this part of your tank sticks out and you're able to be hit. Now, that is a pretty big downside because this tank is large, but people know that they can just nail you, and if artillery hits you, you're pretty much going to get penned and you're a goner because you only have 1,850 hit points. I actually played a match where artillery around the corner just decided to run right into me, fired a shell right here and one shot at me, so there's always that. However, on the plus side, your gun is very good. You have the same rate of fire, damage, and penetration as the FV215B 183mm. However, you have better accuracy and a better aiming time and soft stats, so it's easier to actually use that damage and aim where you want to, so you'll actually do more damage easier in this tank. This is the more mobile but lightly armored 183mm tank, while the FV is more heavily armored, slower, and has worse gun stats. Now that's it as far as British tanks. They did implement one new German tank, the premium medium tank, the Panther MIT 8.8cm L71, which I can't really test right now, but I do have a full tank review of it up on my website, wotguru.com. Just search under tank guides for it. I compare it against the Panther 2 and basically break down the whole tank, and by the end of the review you'll know whether or not it's a good buy for you. The main other feature implemented with 9.5 is the new minimap. You'll want to check off these two, have this on as always, and then basically when you're in the game, it shows the tank names on the minimap for your friendly team and the enemy team. and this helps out a lot because you know which tanks where without having to look anywhere other than your mini-map. And then when enemies are spotted and then they basically remain hidden or become unspotted, there'll actually be a little dot in the mini-map with their name on it to just give you an idea where they're last seen, which helps out later on in matches immensely. Aside from that, there's a couple new maps. There's Ghost Town, which is for team battles only. It's a pretty uniform map. There's Mitten Guard for low tier new players. It's pretty much a town surrounded by ridges that you basically cruise down into and brawl it out. And then there's a snowy version of Winterberg to replace Roenberg on fire. Or not Winterberg, it's Roenberg, but it's the snowy version. I guess you could call it Winterberg. Now there's a couple smaller things like the shell effects. When shells hit tanks, they give off more smoke, particles, and explosions are a little bit more apparent now, which is pretty cool. Doesn't hurt your FPS much either. There's personal missions, which aren't starting till mid-January after New Year events are over, and with personal missions you'll be able to win unique tanks that you can't otherwise buy, which is pretty nice, just by completing a set of tasks. And then the last thing is there's a 10% boost for spotting higher tier enemies, which really helps out light tanks. For each tier you get 10%, so if you're a tier 6 light tank facing tier 7, 8, and 9 tanks, you spot a tier 7 tank, you'll get 10% boost in experience for damage done to them. For a tier 8, you'll get 20%, tier 9, 30%, and it caps out at 30%, so you won't be able to get 40% or higher. And that's pretty much all for the 9.5 update. There is a full list of the patch notes for 9.5 in the link below in the video description, so check them out. There are a few other little things, but I've covered the main changes in 9.5. So anyway, thanks for watching my video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my website, wotguru.com.